Perfect. All right, thank you. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, January 11th, 2022. Let's see. We'll start with roll call. There's a few extra people on this. So I'll go through if that's okay, instead of having you do it, Dominique.
That's fine, thanks.
Okay. I am here, Lacey Rock. Kristin Mole.
Present.
Laura Murphy.
Here.
Mariana del Valle Priento Cervantes. And then I just want to note Lori and Becky are not commission members, and Chelsea is on extended leave. So I'm going to skip down to Michelle Overmeyer.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, Michelle. And Timothy Randazzo.
Present.
Great. Okay, are there any items that anybody would like to add to the agenda that have come up in the last couple of days? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone from the public that would wish to address the commission on an item that's not currently on the agenda, you can do so now.
Chair, there are not any members of the public currently present on the Zoom.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Beth sent these out over email because I think there was a little glitch in attaching them maybe. Did everybody get a chance to view them?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. I can't see faces always, so the verbal responses are helpful because I'm navigating between different screens. Were there any questions, comments, or is there a motion on the minutes?
I am happy to motion to approve the minutes from December 14th.
A second.
Okay, I believe since we were on Zoom, we still have to do a roll call vote. So let me get back to my list. I'll just go down the names as they appear. Kristin Mole.
I vote yes.
Laura Murphy.
Aye.
Mariana has not joined. Michelle Overmeyer.
Aye.
Timothy Randazzo.
Aye.
And I also vote aye to approve the minutes. So the minutes are approved unanimously. And we will continue on to business items. We have two business items. We'll probably have a bit of discussion around both of them. Beth, do you want, I can share my screen if you can.
Oh, sure.
Okay, I have, just get to the right. So this is a little bit of a draft slide deck. So just bear with me as we're getting through it, but I just want to remind everybody that we were awarded, I think it was $100,000 in the last budget cycle to begin working on a climate action plan. And Michelle and Beth and I have met last week to discuss how to get some energy behind this. It's sort of been put a little bit as a back burner as we've been working on other projects. And Michelle has graciously agreed to help with this process at our last meeting, which really grateful for. So we met and started talking about what the process might be, as I said, and we put together a draft agenda because the aim is to have this be presented to council as a study session to give them some additional information, background. They probably all come with various levels of understanding as to climate action plan versus sustainability plan, CEQA requirements, general plan integration, all of the different things to consider. The ultimate outcome that we're working towards, and I'll talk a little bit more about process, is to have council approve an RFQ for a consultant to begin developing a climate action plan for the city. I would like to have that done before the fiscal year ends so that we have that sort of teed up and ready to go. Michelle or Beth, do you want to add anything before I'm going to just switch over and show the agenda?
No, you're good.
Okay. Did you want anything to add, Michelle? Okay. Is everybody able to see the agenda now, or are you still seeing the PowerPoint?
We can
Yes, you can
see.
see the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. So the primary meeting outcome is to inform the council and provide options for them to consider. We would like guidance at the study session, but not necessarily a vote on anything at that time. And we'll walk through some of the different considerations, but it'll primarily be information and discussion. After we get some thoughts and hear some feedback from council, we'll bring it back to the Environmental Commission, draft an RFQ, and then that will go through the city process, which also includes, to the best of my knowledge, a review and approval by council, since it's above, I think 30,000 is the limit. So this is the agenda of the items that we're hoping to cover. We want to bring in a couple of guest speakers. Many of you who have been on the commission for a while may remember Amory from AMBAG coming and doing a greenhouse gas presentation on what the city's audit results were. So we'd like to start with some of that context and background, what the legal requirements are from the state regarding climate action plans, and how those sort of interact with other plans. As you'll see down towards the bottom, hazard mitigation plan and general plan. Michelle's going to provide some definitions because I think it's really important. We all sort of hear these terms a lot, but they might mean different things to different people. And so we want to make sure that we're using the same words to mean the same thing as we begin this process. This piece that's highlighted is kind of the hardest part, I think, for all of us who are starting to delve into this, because none of us are CEQA experts or legal experts. And the situation that we have to get some information on is there's a range of different sort of depths into which you can develop a climate action plan. And I've talked to a couple of colleagues regionally. Michelle also reached out to Ashley from the county. But one of the things that I heard is that if you call it a plan, right, like whether it's a climate action plan or a sustainability plan, then if it's a plan, it needs to go through CEQA. If you don't want it to go through the CEQA process, then you have to call it something else, like a guideline. There are pros and cons to different levels of plans. So let me see if I can go back. Oops, oh shoot, hold on. Okay. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoints now again?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see
Thank
the,
you.
yeah, the
Okay.
Google Slides.
Yeah, Google Slides. So looking at a climate action plan as a formal standalone document or as part of a general plan update, it can be either from the state requirement perspective. I'm not sure exactly what our general plan includes or will include. I have to reach out to the city's consultants to ask for more information on that. I haven't had a chance to yet. But one of the things that it does benefit if it goes through the CEQA process is that it allows some streamlining for future projects. So say for example, a developer wants to come in and build a development of some sort. If they can show that their project meets the mitigation measures that are outlined either in the GHG section of the general plan or as a separate climate action plan standalone document, then that will fulfill their requirement, and they wouldn't be required to go through and develop their own set of GHG reduction strategies. So it provides some streamlining benefit for developers, for planners, if that's of interest. And I think this says the same thing. So if we think about the scope of a climate action plan versus a sustainability plan, my understanding is that you could have a sustainability plan that has a section dedicated to greenhouse gas emissions reductions measures, and you can just do CEQA on that GHG section of a larger sustainability plan. But that would then allow you also to have other pieces that don't directly connect to reducing greenhouse gas emissions as part of a sustainability plan. So for example, we've talked about limiting neonicotinoids, I don't know if I spelled that right, in the community. So nurseries and such wouldn't be able to sell plants that have these because they disrupt pollinator habits. It could include something about plastic reduction, which we've already, been addressing. So it could just be more broad in other aspects and recognize that there's other benefits to the environment, to people, beyond greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So I'm going to pause there to see if anybody has any questions. No?
Not at this time.
Okay. We're aiming to have this go to council in February. So either the 10th or the 24th, which means we'll have one more meeting, or I'm sorry, those are the council days. So wait, yeah, the 10th or the 24th would be the special meeting, which would be a study session. So our next meeting is on the 8th, and would happen before that. So what I'd like to do is try to put some of the information that I've just shared and presented to you all in a little bit more of a cohesive format, almost like a draft for what would be shared with City Council, and have some, recommendation or direction that our commission would like to advise council to consider. Ultimately, it's up to them to decide what direction they want to move in, but what do we think would be the best for our community? Is it a broader sustainability plan that just has CEQA approval for the greenhouse gas emissions component? Is it just a climate action plan, a standalone document? And the outstanding question of what is already being included in our general plan update, and how that would impact. So there's still quite a few unknowns. But until we start working on it, we won't move forward. So here we are. Beth.
Hopefully by the end of this week, I'll share with the Environmental Commission a handful of sustainability plans and kind of what communities are incorporating that falls outside of. So one that pops up immediately is LA's Green New Deal plan. And in that, they even talk about water and also generating green jobs. So think about the things that aren't necessarily tied, like Lacey said, to GHG. And maybe it does involve us even talking to a couple other commissions I don't know what C Jobs is necessarily focused on this year, but it could be interesting to see where we could potentially merge and collaborate and come up with the best document for Seaside.
Yeah, Watsonville just passed, or the council just approved a climate action plan for their community, which I think would be a good example to look at as well. And there was a planner there that was one of the folks that I talked to in doing this outreach, and one of the things that they talked a lot about but didn't get included in the plan, but might be something that we would want to consider also, is sort of the climate gentrification, so to speak. So they're having issues where Watsonville is still a relatively affordable place along the coast to live. And as people are moving from Santa Cruz areas or Bay Area to find something more affordable and being pushed out because of sea level rise or wildfire or other events that are being exacerbated by climate change, then the prices of housing and all these other prices are increasing and pushing out people that have lived in Watsonville, and they're moving further inland where extreme heat and drought are going to be impacting their health and their life. So thinking about, how that might impact our community as well would be interesting to consider. Kristin, I see your hand.
Yeah, back to your original request about maybe having us help make it cohesive and coherent for sharing with the city council. Is this something that you can share the text that you have written with us, so we can work on it in a doc way? Just trying to make sure that we do the right thing with collaborative text editing and also Brown Act. And then overall, I wanted to share my personal opinion when you're talking about a sustainability plan versus greenhouse gas emission plan versus a climate action plan, and considering what you shared with us, I think it's probably most useful in the bigger picture to ask about a larger sustainability plan, because that's going to approach the matters of greenhouse gas regulations from, I feel like, a more positive standpoint. Because if you're saying we are going to be more sustainable by doing this thing, which is a greenhouse gas emission reducing thing, then that seems like we're now forward thinking, we're prepared, we are sustainable. Whereas if you just regulate greenhouse gas emissions and you say you can't do this, this is going to produce greenhouse gases, this is now a bad thing. So I feel like we might have more compliance, more hope, and more enthusiasm over a sustainability plan. Ideally, too, if it's not represented in the general plan, updates that you were mentioning, thinking about a sustainability plan is more likely to influence the general plan rather than just some specific greenhouse gas regulations.
Timothy?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Kristin was saying. I think that we are long due for a climate action plan. I know that a lot of communities are starting to develop them and pass them and implement them. And I think that's definitely what we should strive for. But I think as a commission, it would be good to, strive for something even more like the sustainability plan, to have that forward thinking momentum. And looking at other avenues. I know that Beth mentioned the increasing like green jobs and stuff like that. So I think it would be, at least my personal opinion, is to strive for the bigger. But if council does go with a climate action plan, I think having it abide by CEQA would be ideal and more beneficial to the city and in its planning efforts for the future. So maybe like that's the bare minimum, but pushing for something bigger like the sustainability plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'll be critical to find out what our general plan has. If they have a greenhouse gas chapter and an environmental justice chapter, what's the scope of that? It'll be going through CEQA, so will that be used by developers, for example? Because if that's the case, then that might free up more resources and funding to expand the definition and look more at a sustainability plan.
I think what might be missing from the GP right now, it does reference just the climate action plan in one of those sections, and it might be climate action section or something along those lines. But what's missing is the greenhouse gas inventory, right? Which is that basis. That's our baseline that needs to be established, that then the EIR would be based on. And I don't think they're doing that. At least I think I shared an email with you, Lacey, earlier in the week. So yeah, I think this would be our avenue, and it could be, again, combo sustainability plan plus those elements if they think it's enough benefit to developers that is defined. And those greenhouse gas emissions as part of a project could be predefined. So if they're not following it, then they'd still have to follow through with their own analysis.
Yeah, one of the things I found in looking at OPR guidelines on greenhouse gas chapters of general plans is that you have to have a baseline and you have to show that the reduction measures are achievable, like kind of realistic and achievable. But they also provide a list of like, these are reduction measures that can be included. You know, so it's almost like a buffet of choose your reduction measure that fits your community. So for us, it might be looking at transportation or building efficiency or whatever else. So Beth, I thought we were legally required to have those pieces.
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's one
I'm
of
going
my
to resend Watson's bills. I shared that not too long ago, just so everybody has it kind of fresh in their inbox. So that's the cap. Anything that they've done is probably what you would see and what we would do if we take that route.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Michelle, anything you want to add? I know you've been in these discussions.
Yeah, I think that was a good summary of what we talked about. I do like the idea of having some broad sustainability strategies if we were to go with a sustainability plan. One of the things that Ashley had mentioned to me is that the climate action plan has a little bit more teeth, and that we'd be holding the city accountable to the measures that are in that cap, whereas the sustainability plan, I think, is a little more flexible. I think she said that people could sue the city if they are not implementing what's in the climate action plan. So it sounds like it's a stronger document, but I do like the idea of having more broad strategies rather than just the greenhouse gas emission inventory and targets. And then, because I am new to this commission, I'm wondering, what is the status of the general plan update? Is there any updates on that?
Nothing as of recent. I think we're looking towards the end of 2022 potentially.
Okay.
So two key questions that I think we need to ask are, if we have a sustainability plan and there's a GHG section of a sustainability plan, can that be the piece that is CEQA reviewed and thereby has teeth, right? Like, so that might be one question. And the other question that is big in my mind is just, what does the general plan have already? What are they doing already? Because that could also be that they could be sued on that too. So those are, Beth shared a contact with me, so I'll be trying to get some more information. And what I'll probably do is at least 2 weeks before our next meeting, I don't know, Beth, you can give me some insight on what the best way to do this is with Brown Act stuff, but just share out resources, kind of like, I just want to give you more time than what's normally published, the time that the agenda is published, to review resources and information. So maybe if Beth and I compile information, like the various plans from other communities, some of these documents from OPR, which are somewhat, I mean, it was like 8 pages, so it was pretty, it wasn't oppressive to read and review. And there's, I think, a couple of videos that you have too, Beth, of Omri doing some overview of what a climate action plan is. So maybe we can just put together some resources to help us be better informed before we come to our next meeting. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Are there any members of the public here that would like to speak on this topic?
Members of the public on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you'd like to make public comment on this item. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Okay. In that case, we will move right along to business item B, which is an update on the progress with Environmental Innovations, who's helping us to implement the PIP4. And we had a call yesterday. Beth and Mariana were able to join along with a healthy representative, of community groups. And I'm going to share my screen again. We are using a tool, some of you may be familiar with it, called BaseCamp. And so this is keeping track of all of the work. For those of you, just as a reminder, the policy is set to go into effect on March 1st. And so a lot of this work will hopefully be done before March 1st. And so this is the BaseCamp site. These are members that have been added, both community members from our area, staff from Environmental Innovations, and some of their subcontractors. So one of the first things we have to do is get the website launched. They have the content for it complete, and we made the decision that it'll be a Seaside landing page, but we might have a redirect site. So something like plasticfreeseaside.com or something, so that then redirects to the Seaside website. Otherwise it'd be kind of hard to use that long Seaside website to do outreach. And then developing a rack card. And for those of you that aren't familiar, I wasn't either. A rack card is like a 1/3 size page that can be handed out or used for display to give directly to people in terms of field outreach, or to mail if the budget allows for that. And then flyering. And we're going to be getting, their approach in general is to get a list of all of the businesses within Seaside and sort of identify, on the range of openness to innovation. There's the early adopters, there's the innovators, the early adopters, the laggards, and then the grumbling, okay, fine, we'll do this. So who are the innovators, for example, that are already doing it, or the early adopters? Reach out to them, can do some rewards, some positive encouragement, get the information to folks that, are willing, but just need some more information. And then what usually happens is that goes relatively smoothly. And then there's the need to sort of work more directly with folks that might be more reluctant and identify avenues to help support their transition. We spent a lot of time, hold on, I'll just skim through some of these. So phone outreach, person outreach, and as you remember, the piece of this policy is not just about plastic utensils, single-use plasticware. It also includes an aspect of litter reduction and litter collection, as well as balloons. And so there's the need to develop the materials that would go at the point of sale for balloons that sort of just give people information on, hey, have fun with your balloon, do so responsibly, right? So it doesn't end up in our waterways, and also informs them that balloons are prohibited at city parks and city events. So that would be created, approved by the city to then distribute to retailers who sell balloons. And then also the information that, you know, folks will need to pick up litter in the sidewalks and parking lots of their establishment at least once per business shift. And those two pieces will probably, just for budgetary reasons and people power that's needed, be recruiting volunteers. So if you know of a pool of potential volunteers through other channels that you work and operate in, let us know, and we will be contacting you to get some more folks involved. And this just sort of gives a more idea of, like, you know, once March 1st hits, it's not like done and everybody's going to be perfect. It's going to take some time after that to continue to get that transition to happen. One thing that we spent a lot of time discussing, and I think it's not resolved yet, and I don't know how or when it will be resolved, but with AB 1383 coming into effect, and it's wonderful. I know it's made my life so much easier to be able to put my compost in the yard waste, and I've been happily doing that regularly. But they're not accepting any compostable to-go-ware in yard waste. And that poses a problem, right? Because nobody has any interest in telling businesses to pay for compostable ware that then ends up in the landfill. But there are a lot of considerations to take into account. And I think what's going to be really important, and what, you know, the outcome was of the call, was to make sure that we have some talking points and some understanding, some shared understanding of how to navigate that situation. Like, how do we best support businesses and consumers who are probably going to be confused by all of these changes, right? There's just a lot changing in the waste world right now. So if you go into a restaurant and they have single-use items, let's say they can't get a dishwasher, so they're going to be still using single-use items. Many people in their shop come in, get these items to go. Many people come and there's maybe 4 booths that they sit down at and can eat, but it's all single use. If they dispose of that compostable single-use to-go-ware in the restaurant, then it's being collected, but the waste management facility is still sorting that out and sending it to the landfill. But if you bring that home, if you bring those same items home, you can't put it in your compost, and it also just goes to the landfill. So what are the better options to be providing businesses? You know, the thing that we really want to shift towards is just leapfrog over the compostable ware and go to reusables. And that's the message that I really want to focus on, but that's a bigger cultural shift to navigate than the single-use items, especially during COVID. So one of the things that we talked about was working with Monterey County Department of Health, you know, providing a statement that says, yes, reusables can still be accepted. This is how you properly accept reusables from a customer and maintain the sanitation. So it's, you know, they have a whole list of protocols already. I would guess most business owners don't know about that. Most customers don't know about that. So how do we make customers aware and encourage them to bring their own items, and make businesses aware that they can do this per health code, and to keep customers and their staff safe and healthy. That's going to be tough. So that was a big discussion during the meeting. I don't know if there's thoughts or reflections from the group. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Yeah, Laura.
I guess I would just sympathize that it's going to be a huge cultural shift, and I don't know that we're really prepared for that undertaking to go straight to reusables. It's a whole different focus for outreach to the community and education and facilitation of doing something like that. And I agree that that would be excellent, but put all this effort into the compostables, and yet unfortunately because the end user of that compost product ultimately doesn't want to have that material in the compost, we're stuck. So there's almost, it's probably not in our wheelhouse to try to influence the policy ultimately around the use of compostable ware in an industrial compost facility. That's kind of outside of our jurisdiction. But that's the thing that potentially could change, that could facilitate what we have to work with. But it does almost feel like we need to pause in this effort when, just as you said, Lacey, we're asking businesses to invest in using compostable ware that then will just go to landfill in any case. So I don't have an answer. I'm just sympathizing that that is a very challenging spot we find ourselves in.
I'm not sure whose hand was next. So I'm just going to go in the order that I see them on my screen. Timothy?
Yeah, just furthering that sympathy. I think it would be good to support reusable materials. With that, I feel like it would be easiest to use to support reusable cups or cutlery, maybe starting with that. I think it's gonna be a larger shift to get people to use reusable containers, just because I don't think many people do that, and that would be a lot harder, bringing in Tupperware and asking your takeout restaurant to put their food in your container. I think that's a bigger shift. So going down that road, I think like cups and cutlery is obvious. I think that's a little bit more manageable. But I guess, yeah, I just want to open dialogue on how to get around that, because I still believe that compostable materials are better in the long run over plastic, even if it's going to a landfill. I know that's not ideal, but I don't know, like, is there opportunities to like collaborate with other cities or counties for that? I mean, I don't really know what that would look like, but I think that's kind of an emergency situation to kind of take control of.
Yeah, there were folks that joined this call from other jurisdictions that have policies already in place. And so they're sort of, I think, curious as to how we're navigating it as well. One good thing about the policy and the situation in general is in our justification for the policy in the series of whereas statements, if you will. You may remember we talked about the life cycle impact of plastic. So yes, the end of life is one consideration, but plastics are also fossil fuel based. And so the production and distribution is different than a compostable item might be, maybe not in terms of distribution, but production. So that was also a factor that was raised. Michelle, and then
I guess with the reusables, is there a way that we can increase community awareness about it? I know that when I go to Paris Bakery, sometimes I'll bring my own coffee mug and they let me get my coffee in that. I don't even think about bringing a Tupperware for my croissant, but I think I need to start doing that. Is there a way that we can start marketing this to Seaside residents to see that you can do it, it's common, it's okay, and maybe we can get over that hurdle
Yeah.
to do this? And then my other comment is with Green Waste, who we have right now, I'm wondering when their contract ends with the city and if this commission will have any influence on who the next contractor is. Would we be able to participate in that RFP process and evaluation and awarding of the contract? Maybe that's where we can have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Michelle. Who are the other providers? Like, who's even at that level of green waste? Does it exist in this area?
I thought we had a different provider maybe 5 years ago.
It's Waste Management and Recology is in the Bay Area. Yeah. I think Green Waste, just in terms of experience in the level of progressiveness with, I think Green Waste does a pretty good job. Recology, I don't know if they go down this far south, but they also have a really strong reputation for, being innovative in terms of waste collection. But I think that's a good point, Michelle, because that contracting process is probably the point where we would have the most amount of influence. But I think the question is even not so much who the hauler is, but where they're taking it. Because if the place that's taking it will compost it, then that's the real kicker.
My turn?
Yeah.
Hey, I have an answer to the thing you guys are all talking about. Just wait my turn. Just wait my turn. Okay, so we've actually been looking at this on some of the other areas that I have been working. So TerraCycle has a number of programs which unfortunately involve paid boxes and shipping labels, but there's also, they coordinate some free programs which you just need to set up public drop-off locations. So this covers everything from the biodegradable, compostable, to go where, which you can get regular shipments of different sized boxes, which they're working on to, they have like a Taco Bell sauce packet recycling program. You just need to have like the official drop off spot for the Taco Bell sauce packets, and then they will recycle those. So having dug into this, like we were getting our masks, our disposable masks recycled. There's a big, extensive, detailed list of options. The most relevant one to this is unfortunately not a free program. That's the zero waste compostable ware pickup. So they have a variety of basically like huge shipping boxes. There are areas where they do local pickup. We are unfortunately not in one. We are a little bit too far out of the way over here on the peninsula. But they have I think the largest side boxes is like 15 inches by 15 inches, but I have to double check the size. But they're not that huge. It's not like a dumpster. But you can have those that are either set up, like if the city can use some of our funding to set this up, if the city can use some of this funding to provide grants for people to have boxes in their own restaurant where people then throw the stuff into it at the end as opposed to into a landfill spot. This might be a way to at least like do some bridging of the gap as we've got the to-go-ware going and we're still working on places that will take it. I'm going to pause to listen for a second to what you all are all thinking, but I have a very big, complicated list.
Does anybody else want to respond or have thoughts on TerraCycle before I respond? because I have pretty strong opinions on TerraCycle.
Ah, that's fair. I'm only in the setting up and researching phase. I haven't had a chance to form an opinion about them, except that they are an option. But it's good to know you have an opinion.
So it's funny, I'm on this big green schools listserv that's like sustainability directors on universities throughout the country, and somebody just posted about this because they have an odd stream that isn't recyclable, isn't compostable. You know, it's things like toothpaste containers. And you know, their question to the group was, you know, this is something we're considering, but I know that there's a lot of critics about TerraCycle because a lot of the stuff that they collect isn't actually recycled or managed, and there's usually a really high carbon footprint as to where it's sent, and if it needs to be dismantled, or, you know, sort of pieces need to be separated in order to process it. Who's doing that? Like which populations are doing that? It might make sense for specific streams. Like, let's say we're going to do a collection of pens at a university, and you know that it's going to be sent somewhere in state, and that it actually is recycled and turned into something. But more often than not, it's the costs benefit from an environmental perspective is just never really weighs out. And it's sort of one of those things where, like wish cycling, people like to pat themselves on the back, like, oh, we just took care of this, but it actually doesn't take care of it. It just makes people feel better and not address the underlying issue of reducing waste and not doing it, you know? So to me, like when we think of a city, it just poses the same challenges where, you know, unlike the aquarium or a campus where it's somewhat contained and you can do kind of let's do a campaign where we collect pens or we collect masks and you know what to do with them, that can work out. But if you don't, it sort of poses the same challenges that I used to have with compost, where I'd have to bring my stinky pail to the Oldermeyer Center to dump it, because that was where the dump station where I was allowed to dump it, right? So I don't want to collect all these compostable items and then have to bring it to one of 2 locations in the city that collect it. Like, that poses the same challenge to me as reusables, because there's these reusable programs like clamshells that have been brought up before, where they have you can get the reusable clamshell, businesses can partake, and then people drop them in these, like, you know, it's almost like a mailbox. I don't like those options because they're still plastic, and it's just not closing the circle cleanly enough. But so sorry. I don't mean to, I like the solutions orientation that you are approaching this with. I haven't had good experiences with TerraCycle. And I think we just as a society need to not use so much stuff, and figure out how to have a more closed loop system. And the cultural shift in that, I'll let you respond, Kristin, before I continue. Go ahead.
So I'm inclined to say there's so many different kinds of things that, like you said, there might be some that are actually recycled. I'm inclined to dig into it a little bit more to see if there's something we can set up, because as much as like I personally in my own life, am going with a zero waste, no single use plastic packaging kind of thing. Like, it's kind of a big jump, especially for some of the businesses. And so if we can find anything that is an imperfect step in the right direction, then it might give us a chance to move there, as opposed to being like, it's so impossible, why are we even trying? There's still all that social science research that, you know, like if you people are going to start taking an action if they can see people taking an action. So there has to be some action that we can give them, even if it's only with part of their stuff. So if this seems like not a complete wild goose chase, I'd still like to pursue if I can find out what is actually recycled. I don't know how to find that out. If you have something from your listserv, I would be happy to explore that further. But I'm hoping that, because some of these are products that like you just need, they're so specific, and like you said, you have to sort them out, but once you get enough of them in one spot, it actually becomes recyclable or becomes worth it. So I feel like maybe there's still something we can do so that we can have something to put out there. Is here is in conjunction with this new goal, a step that can be taken. We're working on the other ones.
So you're, okay.
I
Do
guess,
you know,
yeah.
if you know, Laura Evie might be someone to speak with from the Plastics Coalition, the Regional Plastics Coalition. I can send you her contact information.
Yeah,
that-
I'll try and ask some of them. It seems worth looking into a little bit more in case there is an angle that we can approach, which is useful. I'm willing to accept that my blue sky ideas of recycling all the weird and crazy stuff are not practical. I'm going to hope that I can find something.
All right, I will not poo-poo on anybody's blue sky, so go for it. And you can let us know what you find. Laura.
Kristin, I do also likewise appreciate you looking into options. And I also feel strongly that to the extent possible, right, resilience in a community involves a lot of closing the loop, like Lacey said, bringing things closer to home, trying to avoid all of that shipping, additional packaging, et cetera. But it would be cool to see what you discover. Wanted to touch back on a couple of themes. One is Lacey and Michelle both kind of have indicated, okay, focusing some outreach and some education and community outreach on reusables. I do want to encourage and support that we make that effort and incorporate that into the outreach that we do. So trying to get people to use reusables while acknowledging that it can be a very, very big shift for some people and for particular types of businesses as well. And also on the topic of sort of the contracting with the waste hauler, the issue at hand really isn't in their hands. It's about the compost producer who ultimately is producing a product which is then for sale, typically for agricultural purposes in our region. And so that's where kind of the big wall is here. And I have heard from some compost producers, although not the one that is most local to us, but in the region, who are open to including the compostable ware in their process and then sorting it out after, sort of post-process, and others who are specifically excluding the plastic type compostable ware, but allowing paper type compostable ware to go through their composting process. And so there are different approaches. It's not entirely impossible, just it's the policy right now for the most local compost producer not to include compostable ware. And so that's where the issue really lies. But I think that emphasizing paper type compostable ware is probably a benefit. And so then, back to what Timothy was saying, for the reusable focus on cutlery and cups, which would typically be more likely to be plastic types, that's probably like the most comprehensive approach that we can take. Focus on using reusables, encouraging reusables in those contexts, and then otherwise encouraging the adoption of a paper type of compostable ware, because that could be composted in a home composting system. It could be composted in, if we were to start a project in, community park or something or a garden, community garden setting that included composting, that certainly could go through that process and be broken down. And it's more likely to be adopted sooner in an industrial composting setting than the plastic types. That's all.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Laura. That came up on the call as well, as in terms of like really focusing in on what we encourage businesses to use. I recently got a compostable like wooden spoon. It looked like a piece of wood. If I put that in my yard waste, it would act like a stick. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember in elementary school when we were little and you get the little ice cream cups and the wooden like flat spoon would come with it. It's kind of that idea. So I think that that's a very true point. And so what do we focus on so that if it does even accidentally, right, get put into the yard waste that has a minimal amount of impact on the processor. I also wanted to come back, Michelle, and just share something that I've learned in work related to the influence that one person can have. So there was this really great study done that looked at what really influences people to bring their own reusable cups. And they looked primarily at economic incentives versus social incentives. And even when there was a significant, like 50-cent off discount for bringing a reusable cup, the bigger factor was if the person in front of them brought their own cup, right? And so when you gave your example of Paris Bakery, it just reminded me like what a powerful influence it can have if we do start bringing our own reusable containers. And really, there's businesses that I go to that I do that, and let's like highlight and celebrate those businesses, whether it's Paris Bakery or El Pollo Rey, where I get my chicken and I bring my glass jars and containers and they fill it. Or honestly, there's also kind of, it's intimidating, like, oh, can I bring my own containers? Like, it's kind of an awkward conversation to have with somebody at first. But what's not awkward is if I go to Googly Grill and I have leftovers, and rather than asking for a to-go container, I just pull out my little Tupperware, glass Tupperware, and scrape my plate into that, and then I'm good to go. So there might be easier steps for people to take that we can focus on first as that culture shift happens. It's good discussion, everyone. Thank you. I think I'll share back. Oh yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
So I guess one more comment or question on that. Does the city have social media or a staff person that monitors social media? If us as commissioners are going out to these local businesses and showing that we're the example, can we take a picture of ourselves and ask city staff to post on social media as a way to promote this?
That's a great idea. I have a response, but maybe Timothy, you do, since I saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily have too much of a response to that, but that was kind of what I was thinking of. Maybe something that we could request of the consultant is to create a promotional material or videos that do influence that behavior and show that it is accessible. And I think, yeah, just going off of the idea that, you know, if the person in front of you've has done it, a person is more likely to do it. I find that is so true. And every time I'm out at like Starbucks and I'm using my cup, or I use for grocery shopping, I just have like a bike basket that I use. So I don't even have to bring bags, and I just fill my basket up and then just walk out with it. And there's this one lady that saw me at the store, and then I saw her some other time. She's like, I got a basket. I did it too. So it was like really cute to see. So I wonder if it's an ask that we can, you know, request of the consultant to also do some of that promotional material, or look for a consultant who does excel in video content to that degree.
Mm-hmm. Beth.
I think this was a small part, not this specific, of a discussion with a consultant about how the restaurants are at all these various stages, right? We might have some that are still providing styrofoam, and we might have some that are 100% converted. And then we have those who are accepting reusables. It will be interesting to have a talk with Ernesto, who is our new communications specialist, to see if he has been given his video equipment yet, because I could think that could happen really easily. But also just in terms of the popularity of what is followed by Seaside residents, our site is there. It's definitely the go-to source for city information, but I often find way more people engaged on the Facebook group My Seaside Posse, which I can't advise any of you guys to do anything on that site. I have to myself be careful in liking or even responding to things on there. But I've seen things gain traction on there that otherwise wouldn't be talked about. And sometimes it's surprising by how many likes are given to the topic of even the new street signs that are being installed. So that's really the true public forum versus the city, which is the verified distribution of factual information site. So consider that, but also the consultant will definitely have to kind of put together a list of where these businesses stand, and that's going to be our approach with outreach to them, as well as eventual enforcement. So as you come across those businesses, share them with me, and then I'll do what I can with Ernesto to make it known. And maybe it becomes kind of a seaside thing where we are acknowledging those who are going above and beyond.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, Beth shared Ernesto's name. That's what the response that I was going to share too, Michelle. I'd like to open it up if there's any members of the public that want to chime in on this rich discussion.
Members of the public, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone to make public comment on this item. The chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Thank you. All right, we will continue on then, and I'll continue to keep you all abreast of the situation as it progresses, and just look for emails from me for volunteer opportunities. All right, let's move on to reports from commissioners. Anybody want to share a report? Thank you, Laura. Go ahead.
As always, pollinator garden maintenance continues on Saturdays. This Saturday we are at Durant Park, and this will be the second of our collaboration with the Blue Zones Project. I do have confirmation from them. They will be there to do litter cleanup in the neighborhood while we have our park day from 10 to 12 this Saturday. And they have 15 people signed up as of now, so that's pretty great. I think we could have a really good turnout.
How many did you say? I'm sorry.
15, 1-5. And we've continued to have really strong showing on our pollinator garden maintenance days. So that's all going well. I had shared, but just yesterday, I think late in the day, a grant opportunity related, same topic, called Clean California. I think I sent that to Beth and Lacey both, so potentially they can share the link with other members. I don't have the bandwidth to pursue a grant like this, but it is a grant opportunity for municipalities to do neighborhood beautification, including litter abatement, as well as public art and things of that nature. It's actually quite extensive. So if anyone was interested in a grant opportunity like that, it's out, and I think it's due in mid-February. So enjoy. That is all I have.
Thank you, Laura. Does anybody have any questions for Laura? Timothy? Okay, go ahead, Timothy.
Yeah, I'm planning on going to the Planning Commission's meeting tomorrow. They're going to be reviewing some Seaside Municipal Code amendments regarding accessory dwelling units. This project, it's exempt from CEQA, but I'm going to go to see if there's any sort of environmental considerations that could be implemented. So if anyone's interested in that, that's tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Great. Yeah, let us know how that goes.
Yeah, just to add on to that real quick, it is going to be the first item. David Little is the building official. He's been working on those. A lot of staff had input, some of which was considered, some of which was not. The amendments at this point with the Planning Commission will be in the form of a recommendation of a resolution to the City Council. So very specific comments from the Planning Commission during that meeting will be communicated as accurately as possible to the City Council as comments that were brought up. So, you know, if somebody makes a public comment on it, that a PC member then turns around and also reiterates, then that will be in writing on record for the council to consider. So HCD also needs to, once it's approved, review and make sure that there's no contradictions with state code. So hopefully just for staff's workload, that doesn't happen, but who knows what the potentials are.
Timothy or Beth, would you be able to send out to the commission the draft that they're going to be looking at tomorrow?
Yeah, or you can just go to agendas and download the agenda packet. I think I did send it to Timothy, so if I could easily jump back in there, I'll do it.
Okay.
But it's there online.
Okay.
Yeah, I could forward it to everyone.
Yeah, it's just
Beth just got it to me in an email form, so.
it's easier. Thank you. Any other updates? Okay, I just have two, and this will go, these slides will be sent to Beth, so they'll go in the minutes. But let me just share so you can see. Sorry, can you see the slides or are they too far over?
Too far over.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a bunch of information that came from Zoe at the Monterey Regional Waste Management District. They're partnering with Salinas Valley Recycles on some of these materials. So if you have questions about 1383, this might be a good resource to use. One of the things that they are proposing, and that Lori Evie, the woman I mentioned earlier to you, Kristin, is wanting to do like community meetups of sorts. So there might be a volunteer that says, oh, I'm a member of the PTA in my community, or I volunteer at my church organization, and I'm willing to do a presentation on 1383 to this group of people that I work with or have fun with. And so they're developing some resources for people to use. And I think that might be a good thing for us to do if we wanted to as well. And I reached out to Lori to ask if we could incorporate for folks from Seaside some of the information around our plastics policy and encourage people to use reusables. So if that's of interest, let me know and we'll just continue to keep you in the loop. And then the other thing is just an opportunity I wanted to share. This was shared with me. It's from the PG Museum of Natural History. They have a UC Climate Stewards session that is starting March. Can't remember the exact date. But it's a pretty intensive course. It's somewhat expensive, although they do have, I think, discounts for qualifying individuals. So just as if we don't have enough things on our plate, I thought I would still share this resource or opportunity in case folks were interested, or if you knew of anyone else that was interested. And please do, as Laura mentioned, come to the work session, Blue Zone session this Saturday. I think it'll be a great day. And I'm going to be mapping out some areas with heavy litter, so you'll be able to have a big impact on the streets of Seaside and the parks. Any other updates? Okay, Beth, do you have any staff reports?
I do not, and thanks to Timothy for bringing up the PC meeting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, our next meeting is February 8th. And gosh, look, we're still done before 7. Michelle, you must be our lucky charm. Thank you all, as always, so much. We'll see you in a month, but keep your eyes open for emails and other opportunities coming your way. Have a great evening and a